Everyone, if you're enjoying this content, if you just stumbled upon this channel, right, hit that follow button. Make sure notifications are on so you know I'm going live. I do this 6 nights or 7 nights apparently, 7 nights a week. If so, yeah, hit that follow button right now. Exclamation social one chat for our social media. Follow us on Twitter for tweets. So we have like big panels all the time. If you missed out on that big one last night, it's because you're not part of the Twitter. So change that. Jump into the Discord, heart and soul of the community, right? We have all these great conversations happening. We want you to be a part of them, online and offline. So be a part of the Discord. YouTube is where you find the VODs. If you missed anything, like, comment, and subscribe, and consider becoming a YouTube member by hitting that join button. Helps out a ton, right? If you appreciate having that content at your fingertips, consider hitting that join button, becoming a YouTube member. Okay, so let's get to the second topic. And thanks for like the really, I wasn't sure if that would be the first topic would inspire much from you guys, but it definitely did. So thank you for that. Seriously, all of you.
You have a lot of feelings to put out, okay? It's cathartic.
Apparently. And thank you, Doye, for gifting us up. That's really kind of you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, topic 2. A federal judge has ordered that North Carolina redraw its congressional district maps because an unconstitutional partisan gerrymander. This follows a federal court striking down Alabama's congressional map, claiming a racial gerrymander. An Ohio State Supreme Court found that the enacted map to be an extreme partisan gerrymander. All of the maps were passed by GOP legislators. Should states have local control of their election maps at all? Many have proven to be completely irresponsible in managing them, so why should they keep that power? Or is this mostly a problem with conservatives? Does this pattern say anything about how the GOP's relation to the Democratic project? Okay, yeah. So and thank you for the other gifts up, LJ Steele. So yeah, we're at this situation where constantly these things are being struck down, right? Like the GOP is putting forward laws, and not well, laws and redrawing maps that are clearly to give them an advantage, right? In election, like just to tilt the playing field as far as they think they can get away with, and sometimes even farther than that, and sometimes they do it on racial lines. So, should we have that power in local hands, or should it kick it up to federal? And is this specifically a conservative thing? So start with Wiggle.
Yeah, so whenever something comes up that has to do with like voting and or gerrymandering, etc., I always have to like reread all this kind of stuff. And so I watched all these videos and relearned about this stuff again. And then in the paper they had a whole article talking about it where they talk about the amount of competitive seats and how we have less competitive seats now than we had before, and that's indicative of like a greater change, a greater divisiveness in the country and stuff. And it's really hard. The one thing I know for certain based off this question is that it's definitely not a GOP thing. It's definitely both sides do this. I think if anything, if people think that the GOP is better at this, this just goes into the argument people say that GOP is better at getting what they want versus that the Democrats aren't doing that. Um, Outside of that, it's kind of weird because there's arguments over how gerrymandering in some way could help minorities because you could push minorities in a certain direction and they could get more they can get their own district, etc., and that could give them more output. They can get them more power in government. Then there's arguments that say it should be split along a different line. I don't really know how I feel about it. I'm interested in hearing what people think.
Okay, thank you. And we're in a hype train right now. 50% down, 50% left. Level 1 hype train can get to level 2. Sub to channel, give bits or give subs. Help out that hype train. Support this community. If you like this content, help us out. Now's the time. Great time to do it. Now let's see, get that hype train to level 2. All right, let's go to Scott.
Yeah, so first of all, I want to preface this entire debate section in the sense that I don't really give a fuck about voting. Like I think it's fucking immoral most of the time, anyways. But that being said, let's talk about gerrymandering. So gerrymandering is something that is cheekily referred to as a zombie myth, right? It's like one of those myths that just won't die. Yes, do the Republicans gerrymander more than the Democrats? This is true. This is actually a thing. They are better at it. One of the main reasons is because Democrats don't fucking vote in local elections, and so Republicans tend to hold more state seats, which are in charge of this, than Democrats do because they only show up to vote in big elections. That being said, gerrymandering that is partisan is a zombie myth because it's not actually effective. It doesn't work very well. And the data bears that out when you stop looking at symmetry and when you stop looking at responsiveness, but you also add in efficiency. So when the problem is that a lot of the way that the data is gathered in doing these studies doesn't really show the full picture, and it doesn't compare to other things. It doesn't control for like a blue wave or a red wave and things of that scenario. So when they talk about competitiveness of seats, the thing is that competitiveness has been going down since World War II and has been a complete downward trajectory the entire time. And tons of studies have been done that show that this is not due to gerrymandering. The effects of gerrymandering maybe last 2 to 3 years, and most of the less competitiveness occurs not in redistricting cycles. Now, is there an effect? There absolutely is an effect. But what we really should be worried about, and what is the real problem in this country, and what actually makes our elections not as competitive, is not partisan gerrymandering. It's called bipartisan gerrymandering. This is a much, much worse issue, and the media and lefties like to come at Republicans for partisan gerrymandering, which really doesn't work that well. But what does work well and is damaging is bipartisan gerrymandering, where Democrats and Republicans get together and make bipartisan deals about how they're going to gerrymander. And what ends up occurring is they start doing tit for tat to make sure that all of the incumbents that have power in both parties can create safe seats for themselves. And this is way, way more effective than partisan gerrymandering at ensuring that the people that are in power don't have to have free and fair elections to try and get them out of power.
Thank you so much. We have less than a minute left on the hype train. Let's see if we can get to level 2. Subs to the train and give bits, or give subs. Help us out. All right, let's go to Half Baked.
All right, so to the point of, is this only a Republican strategy? I think Scott touched on a ton of points that I was going to hit on. It's obviously not. If you look in 2022 alone, Maryland, New Mexico, and Illinois all did redistricting, or all had redistricting that was pretty clearly partisan in nature. But the problem is that in our system of government, this is basically a necessary evil, or it's something that it's going to occur unless you. I'm just not sure if you can fix this because of our federalist system. The federal or the states are always going to have control over this, and then yeah, no, I'll just pass it along because I'll get to it in the queue or open.
Doobie, please.
So I agree with just about everything Scott said, except the first part where he said that he doesn't support voting because it's immoral. I also don't support democracy, but not for that reason. But yeah, everything else Scott said I think is on point. Yeah, that's it.
Erudite.
I don't know if you saw my DM Prime. Just want to make sure. But to be honest, I'm going to absolutely say that I'm definitely not nearly informed enough to actually be weighing an opinion in on this. I think it's actually really important to identify when you should and shouldn't give public opinion on things. And this is actually a topic that it's oftentimes municipal or state level politics when I'm a Canadian. So I just encourage viewers to make sure that if they are listening to these people, that they are asking for evidence and encouraging people to actually have informed positions. Other than that, I'm probably actually going to dip. But I appreciate you all for having me. And as always, thank you so much, Prime, for hosting me. I super appreciate it.
Have a good one.
It's extremely depressing.
No, fucking mad
Yeah,
respect.
no, I didn't realize that she was Canadian. That's what I'm talking about.
No, like
Hey,
100%. I respect
Nice
it.
to see you.
Bye.
Peace.
Bye.
Okay.
Brian, why are you letting so many Canadians around here? What the fuck?
I know it's a mistake every time. It's a mistake every time. I regret it. All right. So let's go to Wick.
Okay, so actually, I'm with Scott on a lot of what he said. That again, not the voting thing. That's a little weird. But when it comes to bipartisan gerrymandering, the powerful want to keep their power, and they will do what they can to ensure that they do so. And it's a real issue. Now, that being said, I think there is a lot to be hopeful for when it comes to the court's decisions in these cases because they push back against partisan gerrymandering. Hopefully, this will expand to push back against gerrymandering of all kinds. It's not just a conservative issue, and if something's immoral, you got to call it out, even when your side does it. And I think it's wrong. What concerns me more than this, though, and something that's been flying under the radar, I haven't heard really much talk about it, is the measures to limit direct ballot initiatives. So what a direct ballot initiative is in things like states like Missouri or states that are California, where they take a law that they propose and they put it directly on the ballot so that people can engage in direct democracy. A lot of states that would otherwise be red-leaning have voted for a lot of progressive issues, expanding Medicare, and access to things like that. It's a really good thing. The issue right now is a lot of these states legislators are cracking down on the ability for private citizens to put these direct measures onto the ballot. For example, in one state, you have to have all your signatures you collect on a single sheet of paper. So it's leading to these like comical scrolls that they have to roll out. You see in those cartoons when you roll out the scroll and it extends down the hallway and things like that. And these comical restrictions on being able to place these direct ballot measures into the voting booth so people can vote on it. And I think this is something that is very concerning that we should be talking about, as well as gerrymandering. I think they fall under the same purview here, in my opinion.
Maybe. Oh, I got you, Miss High. Things shipped to my screen. I apologize. Stardust.
Yep. I'll just be like upfront. I have a very like general knowledge of this. I don't have very detailed knowledge of this. But it looks like there are there are a variety of different types of gerrymandering which aren't even like party line based, right? Some of them are based on income and based on like racial lines, and that seems a little bit problematic to me. So I mean, I guess in general, it doesn't seem great, and maybe like an independent board to kind of regulate these things might help. But yeah, so.
And Joe Lewis.
Yeah, there appears to be like a really like democratic trend where like elective leaders kind of choose their voters, and that's kind of I think what Fabian was talking about, which like obviously, if I'm sounding generic, undermines the very principle of representative government. This is kind of personal for me because I actually like I sympathize for Republicans in my state because Republicans are not properly represented in New Jersey, despite having more counties that support them than Democrats, despite even with the most recent election, the split in our assembly is 60-40 Democrat. But then when you look at our House of Representatives at the federal level, it's 10-2 Democrat. So it's like, it appears to be something at the state level and the assembly is working way better in terms of representation than at the federal level. This is kind of why I support more states adopting multi-member districts as an alleviation model. And maybe for those of you who don't know what that is, we might be able to get into that. But yeah, I strongly support multi-member districts.
Okay. All right. And thank you to Not to Erudite for the kind raid of 237 people. If you are coming into that raid, well, thank you so much. I mean, you know what the whole thing is about, so I'm not going to explain it. But hit that follow button right this second, in case you haven't done so already. Hit that follow button. Make sure notifications are on. If you're heading out somewhere else, well, thank you for stopping by, even for a moment. But hit that follow button. We'd love to have you back in the future. Thank you for being here. Okay. Let's open to this up to the panel.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I guess it's touching on what Stardust was talking about to an extent, is that like I heard what you were saying, half-baked takes, and I think there are solutions that are possible. in the kind of form of like kind of what Stardust was talking about, where it's like I know that there's committees though, or like there's organizations that can do the redistricting process for like a state government, where they can offload that to like a third party. And if those third parties are like reputable, you could have something like a nationally recognized program to do this process for people that every state agrees with, and like that is something that could be like a solution, a possible solution. Otherwise, it
Poss-
is inevitable.
Possibly, but like this has gotten legislated through the Supreme Court several times already, and the Supreme Court has already determined like, hey, you can't have excessive partisanship, but we aren't going to be able to decide how much is too much, so we have to say that it can be incorporated in some level.
I hate to say this. I hate to say this because fucking Joe Lewis and I be feuding all the fucking time. But Joe Lewis is 100% right here, right? Like the problem with using like third party committees is that what you almost always end up with is bipartisan gerrymandering, right? What you end up with is a third party that wants to make all of the people in power happy and have no issues. And you end up with an incumbency advantage for the Democrats and the Republicans with a few seats that are competitive that they agree to. And it makes the situation worse. If you're looking at the electorate and how many competitive districts they have, as opposed if which is the model of some districts shouldn't be competitive. That's the other problem, right? Is we the way we measure these things is a little bit off. But honestly, again, I'm not a big fan of voting or the state here, but multi-member districts is honestly one of the better solutions that you can have to this issue. And
would that be Joe? Would that simply just be like in addition to the like? Would we just be adding them to the entire body, or would this be
No.
Okay? Could you give me, because I've heard this, I've heard people give me talk to me about this, but I've heard 2 or 3 different ideas.
Yeah, the basic idea is that with bigger geographical units, they generate more competition because they contain voters with more varied political interests. So, like with great diversity, the number of viable electoral coalitions increases. Obviously, strong challengers are more likely to run, and neglected communities of interest become more relevant. A clear majority is always going to capture at least one seat, but any sizable minority would play a significant role in determining like the remaining winners. So what that looks like is you expand the district, and this kind of is in support of the problems in Jersey, where certain districts are carved right along racial lines, right along class lines. So the validity in that is you let the red districts expand and be red districts, but they still have to vote, and like they still have to like vote and advocate for those communities. You can't just openly like neglect Newark because it just got added to your district.
I understand that, but like the Supreme Court's already talked about compactness. So like a district has to be compact. It has to be it's typically seen, it's typically done along cultural lines, but this can end up looking like
they accept
racial
Jersey's
lines,
model,
income lines, shit like that.
Sure, they accept the Jersey's model of it got like our districting model in terms of a multi I just had a total brain fart, excuse me, a multi-member district that it got challenged and was supported by the Supreme Court in Jersey. So like we're doing it, 10 other states are. So it's like it works at the assembly level and legislature level. I just think it should probably be expanded at the federal. That way you don't run into situations where in my state you have clearly Republican strongholds that are run by Democrats. That way these Democratic strongholds in Republican districts have to actually advocate and go outside of their communities within their district and actually advocate for them. We're not going to get so many anomalies of Republican trucker beating the majority leader, the president of the Senate. That's a rarity, but it shows that like the interests of Republicans in Jersey are different than what Democrats think. And again, like the districts, like I would argue that the districting at the legislative level in Jersey at the assembly level is more fair than what's at the federal level. Even that's 6-4. I think it's closer to reality.
It's extremely depressing because I agree with both Joe and Scott on the topic, so I can argue with neither of them. It's really annoying.
I mean, this sounds basic. I mean, if it works and it's doing what it's supposed to, and why not? Exactly.
Let's go to a Black American maid who DM'd me. Is like I have some knowledge here. So thank you so much for being here.
Yeah. Thanks to Prime, always super cool. But kind of just jumping in here. The thing is, like, gerrymandering is like it is an issue that's like not necessarily separated on party lines, but in the ways that it's impacted, the way that it shows impact is predominantly in the South. In a way, just because the southern states is technically this is an actual stronghold of basically the majority of the black population that's in the United States lives in the southern region of the states, and there is a concerted effort, like within how they do districting, to have as few minority majority populations as possible. And this is like a concerted effort that even the Supreme Court has acknowledged, which of course the new Supreme Court, as of like 3 hours ago, rejected the state of Alabama's request. Like, what, they weren't requested to read, but I can't remember the federal, like, they were based on their population, it was necessary that they should have had two minority majority districts, which means, I guess, two black majority districts based on the population. It would have been extremely easy to do, but the fact that they were all concerted into one showed like a level of I don't know the word I'm looking for. Basically, it was super intentional. And
Yeah, it was obvious.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
but
but,
because of the current Supreme Court, it got blocked, so they don't have to change anything. But I was it's crazy that this topic came up because I was talking to a Alabama congressman about this like 2 weeks ago.
That's interesting. So yeah, that does definitely happen. But I think thinking of that as like racism or like racially motivated is, I think, the wrong way to think of it. Because what seems to be the case, because they do this in California too, for example. Like Joe was saying earlier, after a politician gets into office, or even before they get into office, right? They will do their best to carve out a district that it's full of demographics that are going to be favorable to that politician. So here in California, if you have like a Hispanic or an Asian politician, they're going to try to get that district as full of Hispanic and Asian people as possible, right? So that the politician stays in power and their party remains in control of that area, right? And I think that and you could say that's racist in some way. I don't, but I think that think of it that way is like the wrong way to think of it, because what they're attempting to do in the South, even here in California, is just that, to maintain control for their party. So if they figure that black people are less likely to vote Republican, right, they're going to want as few black people as possible in the Republican district, right, because they don't want that to be a competitive seat. You can say that it's disenfranchising these people, and of course it is, right? But this happens both ways, and it's not like specifically like a Republican problem or a Democrat problem, and I don't think it's like a racist issue.
Well,
Right.
if
That's
if
100% correct, though.
That's
Okay.
100% wrong.
You're
I
shaking
want
your
to push
head,
back
but
on that. I want to push back on that.
Mm.
Even if it's not racially motivated, even if it's just power motivated, the fact that it is having legitimate racial outcomes, why do we care about what the motivation is behind it? If it is hurting minorities, then it is a racial issue, regardless of the intent
No,
here.
that's silly.
no, that's a silly way to look at it.
Why?
That's,
I
because
mean, maybe
there are other
people just
external
don't
factors
believe-
that can contribute to an outcome other than fucking racism.
I
Come on now.
understand, but I'm not saying it's racism. And listen very carefully, a racial issue. Racism doesn't have to come into play at all for there to be a racial issue.
I understand.
I think
I
that
understand. I know what you're getting at. I know what you're saying, like systemic racism, but that's not what we're talking about here, though, right? And I mean,
That's what we're
does
talking
anybody-
about here.
Hold on,
we are.
hold on.
No, that's exactly what we're talking about here.
Hold on. Does anybody-
It is systemic. It is systemic, but at the end of the day,
Look, don't
I
think
guess
of it.
if you
listen,
look at it that way, then yes, you're going to
half-baked takes. Half-baked takes. Don't look at it from an idea of defining. Like, don't look at it like Ibram Kendi, right? Like, just cut that part of your brain off, right? I know your walls are up and your defenses are up. You know, most conservative or even centrist people, the moment they start hearing things that sound like that, they immediately hear systemic racism and SJWs and shit. But just think of it this way. I think it's kind of obvious that in the South, one of the things that Southern Republicans do is they intentionally split up black areas into two different sections because they know that those communities will engage in a certain level of identity politics and that they can disenfranchise them from being able to create powerful voices and political change if they simply put them in two different districts. If I can cut a line right through fucking Atlanta, right? And make sure that half of the blacks in Atlanta are in a majority
blacks.
Democrat district, right? And then another half of the blacks are split up into
The
three
blacks.
Republican districts, right? Then I don't have to worry that Atlanta is going to have these 2 seats of overwhelmingly majority blacks that are working from a
Blacks.
perspective of their needs, of their interests, and of their kind of political power as a means of going against what they believe against the GOP. And that definitely happens.
At the end of the day, when it comes to this specific issue, I think this is about keeping political power and not just because they're like, fuck you, I want to keep all the black people in this voting group.
The issue is that there's the issue is that there's no meaningful difference between these two things. That like if you want to like because the thing that you're saying is like if the distinction we're making is we don't want black people to have systemic voting power because they're probably Democrats.
Really, Alessa?
And like because they're probably Democrats, or we don't want black people to have systemic voting power because they're black. Either like the reasoning is irrelevant. Like they essentially do the exact same thing at the end of the day.
Yeah,
but how do you explain gerrymandering from the Democrats Democratic side?
I can do that because my state does it. My state
it's not It's not whataboutism. It's saying the process is systemically racist.
Yeah.
I'm saying, okay, when it gets used on the other side, is it no longer systemically racist?
No, Democrats in New Jersey are racist, and they overtly carved off a district to keep all the blacks in one area. I can give you a very good example. So District 4, for those of you who want to go and Google it, look at District 4 in the state of New Jersey, and you'll look that it cuts off right before the capital, right before Trenton. Trenton, New Jersey is majority minority, over 80% minorities. Districts 12, 30, 11, 13, and 14 are all Democratic strongholds from the assembly. But when it comes to the congressional district, is District 4, and it is ironically majority white. So it's almost 80% white with the district altogether. If that district goes literally, I think it's like 5 to 10 miles and carves in Trenton, that's over 80,000 people added to the block. So Chris Smith will have to appeal to black people if that district gets carved in there. Why do I know this? Because Chris Smith lost to Josh Welly by less than 40,000 votes. So for a Democrat, it seems pretty advantageous in District 4 to want all those blacks in that district because black people in New Jersey tend to vote Democrat. And Chris Smith will have to, especially if you go to a multi-member district model, he's going to have to appeal to the blacks because there's no other option. You can't appeal to all those white voters in District 4 that you've been comfortable with. You're going to have to go to Trenton and maybe get a fucking smash burger on the way there and appeal to some of these blacks. Like it's just how it's going to have to be. Like Democrats overtly redistrict on lines of race, and it's racist as fuck.
Yeah, so I agree that they do that. I wouldn't call it racist though, but I'm actually curious. So one of the problems with drawing district lines is that they want the populations within these districts to be about like equal, right? So like basically not like totally equal, but within some margin. And when you have like cities where you're gonna have like large population hubs, right? I think that kind of complicates things because you can't just like draw little squares on the map, right? You need to have like lines going off here and there and shit like that to make sure that what the districts end up equal in their population. right?
Correct.
So it's not as
And
simple as like, go ahead.
yeah, so even when you look at the populations between District 12 and District 14, there's a very clear argument that District 12 should probably, maybe, give up Trenton. Like right now, the populations are relatively equal, but even if all of District 4 consumed Trenton, that would have to be some readjustment in other areas. So the thing that I'm arguing is that you give District 4 Trenton, and then you expand eastward or westward closer towards the shore, because one of the problems is that that whole cluster in central Jersey is just gerrymandered to shit. And then the problem is you have like, and I think I was talking to someone about this, where like you have overt gerrymandering along a population, and they validate it saying like, oh, it's like population distribution, when in reality it's just there's more densely populated cities in Jersey. So the problem is that I'm not, and maybe this is to your point, is that even if you try to redistribute in certain areas, you're going to have to expand and contract in different spots. But
Right.
the districts in Jersey are really unequal. Like the entire top of Jersey, the literal entire top of Jersey is a district from like mile to mile. From New York State to New York City, that's an entire district. I think it's like District 8 or something like that. It's really ridiculous. And they validate that by saying like, oh, this is the population in the area. I was like, hang on, like that much area for one district seems pretty far fetched, when they could have just expand in other ways to accommodate the population
Yeah, I agree with
distribution.
you.
I
And
So
again,
I
there's something that happens here in California too. And they'll
Mhm.
use the excuse that districts need to be so we're contiguous, I think it is,
Yes.
where you need to be able to drive from one end to the other, right? They'll use that
I mean,
excuse to say, oh, this is why we're going this. Fuck, I think it's like 4 or 5 years ago. There was a district in California that literally, if you looked at it, it looked like a line going up to carve out a specific section of the state that was like majority like Asian, because this was like an Asian Democrats district. It was really gross, I think, right?
yeah, and
So
like I mean, like even people give shit about Newark, but Newark is like, and Newark is it's like one of 3 or 4 majority minority districts, and they're all run by they're all run by Democrats. But then in reality, it's 100% urban. So it's like there's better ways to remap districts, but this is why like maybe somebody in chat's molding right now, but it's like no, I don't want like what I want in redistricting in a vacuum won't work. You're gonna have to have multi-member district, because again, like they're gonna have to appeal to the entire district that they're in, and not just like carve out the block that like knows is gonna show up.
Yeah.
One of the problems that complicates this is that partisan gerrymandering makes more seats competitive than bipartisan gerrymandering. And one of the things that it does is, because what they want to do is they want to essentially ensure a victory in as many districts as possible. And so, and any vote that is unnecessary in order to win the district is a wasted vote when you're attempting to gerrymander, right? Now, sometimes this can lead to dummy mandering, where they get like too deep into it, and then a blue wave comes and they lose like all their districts, or a red wave, and vice versa. But one of the things that happens is when you have partisan gerrymandering, it causes politicians to move towards the center. And when you have bipartisan gerrymandering or no gerrymandering, what you tend to have is they move further to the edges. Because when you're in a district that's 52-48, all right, Democrat or Republican, what you want to do is you don't want to piss off the other party, because it only takes that much in order to kind of like get you thrown out of office, right? So one of the things that occurs with bipartisan gerrymandering that makes it so much more of a problem is that they end up creating more safe seats, and they don't have a lot of like super competitive seats. And because of this, you have incumbents that can be as radical as they want, or they can just not support their constituency in any way, shape, or form, and it doesn't fucking matter, because their district is 60% Democrat or Republican.
how much of this is based? How much of this is a symptom of our two-party system as a whole, and the two parties having every incentive in the world to make sure that no other party can have any power. And since, as you mentioned, bipartisan gerrymandering occurs.
Yeah, I
it's
mean the
it's
worst thing is government involvement. Most of the studies that I've seen have been like is that we've had less and less competitive districts, and we've had less and less competitive districts since World War II. And they found that gerrymandering has very little, if anything, to do with this, and that it's mostly that generation was extremely involved in politics. And the greatest generation, not only were they super involved in politics, but they paid attention and didn't let their politicians get away with shit. And so they were forced to do what most people wanted, and they were forced to move closer to the center.
I don't know. I think Congress elections are like some of the. I was thinking, like, I don't know. It's like that gray area that no one locally pays attention to. Like we only pay attention to it to the degree it impacts us like nationally. But I
But
think
then that
I think you know who
I
your mayor is. But then when you vote for the congressperson, like I feel like 90% of people see like which are you D or are you R, and then which one has the best
which
chance of
is
winning.
Let's
which is
let's
why
let's let Wiggle in because he hasn't had a chance to speak.
Quickly.
Yeah, I was gonna say I believe like what Fabian's talking about is like is a big issue. They were just talking about that in the New York Times today. They were talking about like Eric Holder, the former attorney general. He's the head of the Democratic redistricting committee, and he was talking about how this would lead to like a level of cynicism that you would experience in America because like the more you have these safe seats and the less competitive seats you have over time, the more the effect on the average American is going to be that you're going to get gridlock and government doesn't work. And the effect that will have is making you like cynical and making you think that there's no reason to even vote or what's the point, etc. I think that's the larger
Based.
issue. I think that's the larger issue that you'd want to like deal with is the creation of disenfranchised voters and the entrenchment of like these two parties. I think to answer Wick, I think a byproduct of that is to hurt third parties. I don't think that's necessarily their intent. I think it's more to just keep the incumbents in power so that
Excuse me.
these two parties have their power. And a byproduct is that is you're gonna have like less of a chance for like a third party. But I think like it's largely going to what Fabian's talking about is like a containment of views. It's like the Democratic Party gets to decide what the incumbents believe, and they can secure and grant you seats. And then the
This
same with the
is
Republican Party.
I understand, and this is why I simp for ballot initiatives and direct ballot initiatives and direct ballot voting. It's because you could bypass a lot of this gridlock, as you're talking about, a lot of this bipartisan gerrymandering by bringing it direct to voter, and that has a lot of knock-on effects to give people in very red states the ability to vote on things that are very progressive and get it passed, and the legislative there, that's how our democracy works. That's how politics works, and they have to deal with it. Now, they have issues with that. They've been trying to suppress that. They've been trying to get that to stop. But that's why I think ballot initiatives are so important. And that's why I think that they can, in a lot of ways, bypass some of the problems we're having with gerrymandering.
Yeah, so I
So,
don't know why we
like direct
can't do
democracy.
this on a national level. I feel like if we put this in the hands of states, like just a matter of time before Republicans undermine it, right? You make it a state power.
What are you saying? What are you saying? What are you talking about here?
Oh,
Gerrymandering
sorry.
or
Yeah, districting. Sorry,
okay,
specifically. Yeah,
sure.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I think it's only a matter of time between before the GOP just undermines it. Just like they're undermining voting rights for African Americans at this very moment. Right? They just do that. You have a big moment in time where you push voting rights forward, and then just slowly as the years and decades go by, Republicans will get to work chipping away at it. Right, this is what they do. Right, this is how they operate. So if we leave it on a state level, then you will never have an issue. And like, it's not like we didn't recognize this before, right? It's not like we didn't recognize this before. That's why we had sorry, what's going on, Scott? You
just trying to get my camera to focus.
Okay, sure. Yeah, but it's not like we didn't have this before. This was how we operated, after the civil rights movement, right? Like, it wasn't that the federal government actually did the maps themselves, but they recognized that you can't leave it up to the states. You certainly cannot leave it up to the South, right? And they had to do pre-clearance, right? So had to go up to the Justice Department before they're going to make any change, and they kept rejecting all that stuff because of the rampant racism of the Conservative Party. So
Okay, the only problem I have with this is if we make it a federal power, what happens when the federal government is controlled by these same Republicans? Suddenly, they not only have the power to do it in their state, but they have the power to do it on a much broader level. And so there is an inherent danger in putting it in the hands of the federal government because we have to realize that at some point or another in the future, that people we do not want to have the power over this lever will have the power to enact this level. So that's where I'm very very I'm very wary of giving so much power to a federal entity in this state. It's like I do not like it.
I don't know. I think it's possible. Like again, like I don't know. I think you can combine districts in such a way where you can get a multi-member district model, and people will probably be okay with that. Because again, like you won't have like singular representatives covering just a engulfment of land. Like for fuck's sake, like District 2 in New Jersey, if you go tip to tip, is 70 miles. Like, and then we're trying to act like, oh yeah, Jeff Van Drew is really encompassing all those people in Atlantic City. No, he completely ignores Atlantic City, and he overtly caters to those like middle, like by McGuire Air Force Base fucking Republicans who fly Confederate flags, unironically in 2022. It's like it would be cool though, like. You would have like with the expansion, you wouldn't even have to recarve or redistrict District 2 in a multi-member model. You could just call that District 1 and then have 3 members in it. And that would be like an easy solution. And that makes more Republicans enticed to compete for these seats because they're not competing for a singular seat, so they can appeal for different parts of the electorate. And then also like you would have like different people represented in different ways. So you can have the Republican who really wants weed cultivation. You can have the Republican who's like kind of questionable about weed, but he might want to just release felons instead. Like you get different people that you collaborate with in the House of Representatives, which in turn makes your state more competitive as a whole. I don't see it as an issue.
Yeah, I'm ignore what PrimeCayes is saying because that's just like silly and just fucking no points and not backed up by anything other than Republicans racist bad. So fuck our entire governmental model. But to talk with Joe Lewis is saying,
I'm going to fight with you in a second, but go ahead. Sure.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I'm sure you won't have anything to back up what you're saying. Anyways,
okay. What? Anyways, Republicans are racist? Yeah. You mean like and have act in a racist manner through their election policies?
Anyways, so Joe Lewis,
I do have stuff.
Yeah, no, it's not that tough. It's just like not even worth talking about. It's hilarious. But anyways, so Joe Lewis, like I completely agree with you, and I want to back it up just a little bit for anybody that might be a conservative, right? Billy PrimeCayes had such a hard time getting anything done in Jersey as a black conservative that lived in the area, and one of the reasons was because of exactly what you're talking about, is that the district wasn't seen as winnable in any way by the Republicans. So he got no support, despite representing a very, very, very large, albeit probably minority of the district. But a lot of people that have had a completely unspoken, like just don't have a voice in that district that I think would have been much better off had Billy PrimeCayes been able to have, let's say, a second seat.
We also don't talk about the
Joe Lewis. Oh, we didn't hear you.
Yeah, like even with District 9, right? Like District 9 is 36.2. Yeah, like District 9 is like less than, I think it's now even almost like 30% white. It's like really, really low. And then even when you look at even looking from the like, representative stats, so like Bill Parcells is a piece of shit. But the problem is that this like idea of like it doesn't matter if you're in District 9, like you're just gonna have to vote for a Democrat because you're fucked elsewhere. Now, if the redistricting in District 9 was in such a way where it actually encompassed more individuals that are representative to the community, because it's for fuck's sake, there's like I think 7 districts alone in District 9. It's a ridiculous number. But then like despite that, and again, like I want to make this, I don't know how more clear I can make this rant. Like the state assembly is more diverse than the House of Representatives in New Jersey. Like but then like when we get to like when the rubber hits the road of like maybe we should probably like look at these states that use BPA and different types of multi-member models to readjust like our problem with gerrymandering. It's like, and then this is supported by data information. There's pushback on Democrats, there's pushback on Republicans. In some states, valid reasons, like Georgia, for instance, but like by and large, I think it'll be a net good. It's just that like, how do you carve these things in such a way to have the split that you're looking for? And that's going to be something that you're going to have to Democrats and Republicans sit together to figure out and sort out.
Yeah.
But I think also like senators to be involved in stuff like
So
that.
back to it. Sorry. That I don't have evidence that Republicans are racist in their gerrymandering. Like what? Like in the article that I gave you at the start of this, right? And our friend Black American May backed it up. Alabama has just got struck. Their map got struck down for racial gerrymandering. Right? There was another state, and I always forget which one. It kills me. Where a judge said that the map was done surgically, right? To
North Carolina.
Sorry, what?
North Carolina.
North Carolina. Yeah, yeah. It was the map was done in a surgical manner to impose like racial gerrymandering. Like this is what they do. This is what they do, right? And then that's just like the maps. Right, then there's the actual laws. There's the closing of the different polls, right? The polling stations and black areas, right? I wonder why, just by coincidence, I guess, right? The fact that when you vote in the black area in a lot of these states, you have to wait in line much longer than when you are in a white area. Like this is like what they do. So yeah, the Republicans, right, are enacting, let's be clear, racist election policies, right? So.
That they'll chip away your voting rights, right? And so your evidence so far is that there has been some cases of some Republicans instituting things that happen to correlate with race.
Also, the entire Southern strategy of the entire history, decades-long history of the Republican Party,
and then having state Supreme Courts knock down these racist gerrymandering policies. Look at Ohio, the gerrymandering case that you sent us today. That was deemed to be the court saw it as it is taking too much of taking race too much into effect when they draw these lines. That's all it means. And then it's not that they're racist. Again, this goes back to they know that black people tend to vote Democrat more often, and that's how these lines get drawn for political power reasons.
So black people have less political power in the end, right? So that's how that works out. Is that also these people with a history of having a problem with black people, right? A history of that. Happen to reduce the political power of black Americans. Interesting how that works, but nothing's racist there, guys. They didn't say the N-word. I know they didn't say the N-word, so it breaks your mind. I get it. Yeah, I know.
No, I'm not. It doesn't break my mind. I'm just saying these lines are.
Let's go through the evidence that you gave, right? You want to talk about how Republicans are racist and they're doing racist policies.
This is not helpful because it really doesn't matter whether they're racist intent or not, whether they do it because they hate
we understand
or they just want to keep power.
We understand.
It's actually
the claim you're making is separate from what Prime is saying. Prime is saying that it's actively racist. So let's let Scott respond to that, please.
I don't care. I don't care if it's actively racial intent or not. I'm with Wick here. I don't care if there's racial intent or not. It is racist. There's a racist impact because
you already ran away from.
There's a racist impact. I believe that many members of the GOP are fucking racist, without a doubt. I mean, they do it with their actions. They show it with their actions. But I don't really care if any individual election law is backed by racial animus. I don't have to prove that. That's like unimportant.
You get on your fucking soapbox, call everyone racist.
No, just the GOP. Just the GOP.
That I'm ready to fucking topple over.
And then before I
get to fucking speak, you've already pivoted like a fucking coward.
Is that a backpedal to say that?
Where the fuck did I pivot?
Well, you already
Republicans were racist.
You don't know. Republicans are racist. I never back down from that. But I'm saying it doesn't matter if they have racial.
Now it doesn't.
It doesn't matter whether an individual action has racial animus behind it because the impact is the same.
You were so passionate that you stopped being a moderator and you started debating.
Yeah, and I do this
and
all the
then-
fucking time. Don't act
and
like
now
you're fucking new. Don't act like you're fucking new
Now
here.
you're
What, Scott's new here? Oh, Prime inserted himself in the. I do it all the fucking time. Don't act like you're fucking new here, buddy. All right?
This is the thing you were so passionate about, and yet you
Goddamn right.
immediately
Every fucking time I call him out.
you're a coward.
I'm
You're
a
fucking
coward.
These
Let's do it. I'm waiting
Prime,
for you.
you would
I'm waiting for
agree-
you to fight. All you gonna do is calling me a name.
Wait.
Like you said, you
Prime,
want to knock
you
it down.
would
Let's
be a
go.
coward, though.
I'm ready.
That's weird.
Let's talk about the polling location issue that you wanted to bring up. The most significant issues of polling times have been made as a means of putting larger polling locations in southern states so that it would be easier and quicker for individuals to be able to vote. Funny thing about that is the worst issues that occurred in was Texas. Texas is 10th in the rankings for black voter turnout. So a lot of these places where they say, oh, this is a racist policy that's disproportionately affecting the black, is done almost completely off of
The black.
emotions and fees and not actually looking at any of the fucking data. So we can just dismiss that because
I'm
even
waiting
if
for
you
data.
believe
You haven't given me.
What is that? What is that 10th based on?
Where's your data?
racial, if you believe that racial outcomes made things automatically racist,
Yeah,
which
you
you
can
initially
post the data in chat. We'll
Wait,
look
wait.
at it. I did.
Well, like, I mean,
It's
I'm
not
somewhere
just
in the
outcomes.
middle.
We're talking. But the thing is,
No,
weird that
you
we're
can
having.
say something's
It's weird that we're
racist,
having
and there's a degree of racism. And,
All right, I mean,
But
Yeah.
but the thing is,
Yeah.
it's not even a degree. Everyone in this conversation agrees. They're like, oh yeah, they are specifically targeting black people with the goal of disenfranchising them. But we're saying, but that
it's
doesn't
not
make
to disenfranchise
but-
though. It's to they're not taking their right to vote away.
they're
It's-
to consolidate power.
Well,
they're
yeah,
and
specifically
also-
targeting on a
yes,
racial
that's very
basis.
important though,
But I'm
right?
saying-
Like
but
the
I'm saying that
consolidation of political power is much more the reason than racism.
But that doesn't
correct?
matter.
We're-
That's
but we're
beside the
targeting-
point.
But it's not
Wait,
just,
hold on,
it's
wait,
not
hold
just
on.
because
Oh,
they're
God.
Democrats. It's because
Democrats and
they're
Republicans
black.
don't
No,
get-
okay, but
No,
Bam,
it's because
when you
they're
frame
Democrat.
Bam, when you frame it
they're
like that, when you frame
they're-
it, okay, wait 1 second, please, halfway. So Bam, when you frame it like that, you make it sound as if they don't do this with every racial group,
But
including
no,
white
it's
people,
very different.
including Asians and Hispanics. Why
I'm gonna
is
tell
it
you why.
different when they do it to black people?
I would say
I'm
it's
telling you
a
why,
little
because
bit
black
more
people-
difference with black people because black people they believe vote as like a monolith. I think
Exactly.
like
We are the
you can
highest
see with
rate.
like
What?
Latino individuals there'd be splits depending on like how they view things. Whereas like with blacks they see it as a monolith, like they're gonna vote Democrat no matter
Wait,
what.
so why would that be the case?
because
That's
because
just what we've seen with
historically
exit
there is
polls.
a
Could it
trend.
be
historically.
No, not just a trend. It's like what black
No,
people vote like what over 90% Democrat.
90%.
I don't
So,
believe
like-
there's like
So why are we
It's n-
denying that they're picking black people on a
I'm
racial
not denying
basis?
it.
There
Hold
is
on. I'm not. I'm not.
But you
I'm
said
not
that they
denying-
weren't.
I'm not denying. I'm telling you that they do this with every racial group, and the intentions aren't racist. If you're saying that that disproportionate racial impact equals racism,
No, it's not.
right?
Impact,
Or
it's
equals
the
bad,
intention. The
right? It's
intention
like
is
it's
to
not.
target black people. It's
No,
not-
the
it's-
intention. No, the intent. Oh my god.
lines to incorporate a bunch of
okay.
rural white folks.
Black America
This
made,
is so
what
silly.
fucking fantasy world are you living in where you think Republicans are sitting in the hallowed halls of Congress going, how can we
I'm not-
fuck over black people?
It's not.
They don't
That's
give a
not.
fuck.
That's not the point
don't
I'm making.
care.
I'm saying.
They
I'm
don't
saying.
give a fuck about you, and neither
No,
do
I'm-
Democrats.
Dude, I literally had this conversation.
coward.
I had this conversation with an Alabama congressman about this, and he was very like blatant about it. I think there's even an interview related to it. Yes, they do specifically see black people, and like they see black people as Democrats. The way that in a way that's very particular to
They
specifically
vote-
black people. But
I've been told this
wait a minute,
too.
I'm finishing your question. A way that they don't see with Hispanics, a way they don't see with Asian people, because those groups are like, even though there's majorities, they're still hit or miss. But when you see an area predominantly black people, they do specifically choose how can we give these people as little voting power as possible, because we're under the assumption that all of these
voting
people are
power.
Democrats.
Bam! In a world where black people vote 50% Republican, 50% Democrat, would you say the situation would be the same?
No, but
No,
I'm saying
no.
that
We don't live in it.
world,
Speaking of fantasy world,
well, that's
speaking of
our
fantasy
point.
world,
What you're saying-
That's our point. Is that it's not that way. It's
It is.
it's a
It
90
is,
plus
though.
split.
but
They
No,
vote
like,
90%
No,
towards
wait a
the
minute, you're
Democrats. So
justifying-
they're
we're
when
saying
you
that
look at it from a 30,000 foot view, when you're doing political strategy, you're going to look at that and go, we probably want to avoid that district because they're going to vote Democrat.
Look, all
Not
you're
because
doing
they're
is
black. Not
justifying
because
this.
they're black.
Why
but
does
because
this
No.
they're
matter?
a
Why is this
Democrat.
important?
It's the
No.
reasoning why they
You're
think they're going to vote
you're
Democrat.
explaining it, but I'm saying what you're justifying what we're saying, but you're not saying what we're saying isn't true. You're just giving a justifiable reason for it. We're saying they're targeting black people specifically on a racial basis, and you don't disagree with that, do you?
Yeah, I agree.
No,
Yes,
So,
but it
you're
is not
saying the
out of
reason.
racism. It is not. It is not
So what?
motivated by racism. It is
So what?
motivated.
Look,
So what? If it doesn't matter why it's
These-
motivated. Let me be
hate
very clear.
That is
Wait,
If
why
if
why
an
wouldn't you guys
action
see it as
if an
racist?
action has an outcome that is primarily hurting a specific group, it doesn't matter if this was intended to happen or not. It doesn't matter if there was racial animus involved. The fact that it's
It isn't.
specifically
It isn't.
impacting a
The
race
South
specific
ranks
group
consistently
means
high in black voter
we
turnout.
should look at solving the problem because it is a problem and it does not make any difference and it's not helpful to discuss whether it's racist or not, whether they were racist in their hearts or not. It doesn't fucking
Okay,
matter.
but
There's
Wick,
no
Wick,
you
you're talking about like solving a problem.
Absolutely
Wick, if
does.
you'd like to solve a problem, you first need to identify where the problem is coming from, right? So what we're saying is that there's no evidence to indicate that this is happening due to racism.
They
right?
are targeting black people. That's all we're saying. Yes.
Okay, yes,
That's the only thing
right.
that matters.
But they're also targeting every other group in the same way for the same fucking reason,
And Democrats
which is
are
to
targeting
consolidate
groups on the
power.
other
No.
side.
Which is to consolidate power, right? So when a Democrat in California, right, pushes for gerrymandering of a district to ensure that the white people that would be in this district are out of the district, so they can have more Asians or Hispanics there to support the Democrat politician, right? I'm not going to call them a racist for doing that.
There are no other groups in the South. The South is black people and white people. Like there's like maybe a 3% Hispanic.
Oh wait, hold on. Wait.
What
No,
about when
no, hold on.
Democrats
You're being
draw
silly.
their lines to avoid having rural white folks in their districts?
This would
Is
be
that-
this would be the same thing. It's just you wouldn't call it racist. I would imagine those people that are rural white Americans would say, "Hey, we're being disenfranchised because we're rural white Americans because they view us this way and they think we're gonna vote this way, and so we're being having the grip of the government against us." It's just in this instance, these people are black, and so that's why it's racist.
I think those rural white folks would go, "Oh yeah, it's because they think we're going to vote Republican."
Yes.
So
Okay.
have faith.
What
Can I
are
try
they
to
targeting based on?
Can I try to?
Their Democrat, their
rural and white.
identities. They're the rural white guy. They're looking at like a generic stereotype. That is what you do when you're trying to win a political race. I hate to break it to everybody.
What do we call when we target someone based on a racial stereotype? what do we call? There's a word for that.
It's not a fucking stereotype.
But I'm
They're not saying that they
But-
plan on fucking opening fried chicken places and therefore they want more black people in the area. That would be targeting them on a racial stereotype. They're saying this group votes 85% Democrat.
And I
So
agree with
obviously I want to separate that
But
because
they
I'm
are
trying to
separating that group.
maintain my power.
Yeah,
They do
they're
the
on that
same
racial
thing to
basis.
Asians. They do the same thing to Latinos.
Yeah, it's like-
They do the same
I
shit to
don't-
white
But there
citizens.
are no other groups in the
This is-
South.
this
This is what I'm
is-
saying.
this
This is something that y'all don't get. There's
this
only
What are
black
you
people and white
talking about?
people.
There's no other
Wait,
groups.
wait,
There
this
aren't.
seems-
There's no large.
I guess
Okay,
I guess
no, I
Hispanics
think
don't
we're
exist in the
okay.
South. Like
No, they don't. There's no large
Wait.
Hispanic race
Okay.
in the
This-
southern eastern region of the country.
Okay,
No, that's
okay.
not.
We got multiple people who are trying to get in here. All right, so we're gonna go Wiggle. We're gonna go Joe, then Wick. All right.
Yeah, I think like there's degrees of like racism. So it's like you don't have to think of it as like they're going out with pitchforks and they're saying like we have to kill all like black people or something like that. There's a degree of racism and you would acknowledge that, well, if I look at this, yeah, it's racist. And then let me look at the reasonings why and be like, oh, they believe that these people are going to vote Democrat because they're black and the data shows this. So, yeah, like, we think just because they have black skin, no matter what their job is, no matter how wealthy they are or anything, they're going to vote this way. And the trends seem to show that. And then you would look at it and be like, well, that's less racist than assuming that they're going to vote black because they have
Literally
some
no
sort of, like, brain condition because they're black, and so they vote Democrat. It's like,
Literally
it's just... Yeah,
They
but it's
look-
like, that's what I'm saying. It's like, what's the argument? Like,
They're based off statistical data, including socioeconomic status, education levels, property values, and race. Nobody looks at it and just goes, "There's a lot of black people here, therefore all Democrats." No
But they
one fucking
genuinely overrepresent race that way.
They-
That's what we're
they
saying.
do
That's the
that.
thing. They
he's
just
They do
say,
that
"Oh,
with
there's
my
a bunch of black
capital.
people here."
Sorry. I mean, I need half-based. Is he back? Is he okay? He's coming back. Great.
Slowly watching him put his headphones on. He's back and can hear my voice. Go ahead. Lewis.
Let's get back to the match.
You're too good at that. You've done that before.
Thank
All
you
right.
for waiting, everybody.
What's it? Half-baked takes. I have a question for you. Maybe we can get to the weeds of it. I'm going to lay out just like facts. Okay. So, District 4 in New Jersey and District 12 in New Jersey are distributionally identical. They're overwhelmingly urban. Rural is less than 3% in each of these districts. Okay. So that's the floor I'm currently working with. District 12 is majority minority with 48% white people. District 4 is majority white with 78% white people. District 12 currently has my capital, Trenton, New Jersey. The median income of Trenton, New Jersey is $20,000. The demographic of white people is less than 10%. What value does
$20,000 median? Damn. Son.
what value does district?
When are they taking that capital? When are they taking that capital?
District 12, District 12's median income. The average median income for District 12 is $87,000. What political value? What political value does
they need
District
a
12
carpool
have?
to protest, bro?
Yeah, but my question is, Hapik, what political value does District 12 have for keeping Trenton in its district?
I would assume it'd be for them to keep the votes, right? It would, because they know it's an urban area, and an urban area is going to have a certain like political bend on average.
Okay, so all right. So then, why is it that the residents of District 4 want Trenton? District 4 has a median income of $91,000 and is 78% white. What's the political value of District 4, which they argue every time we talk about redistricting to have Trenton? Why would they politically want Trenton, New Jersey?
You're saying, why would the district that is predominantly white want Trenton?
Well, there's a lot to it. I mean, it's a majority minority community with less than 10% white people, as a median income of $20,000. So what's the why do they want District 12? Why do they want Trenton so much as District 4?
Probably because they probably know that they have enough strength on the back end in that district to make up for the fact that Trenton's going to get added, and then they know that they'll add an additional seat by picking up that new district that got rid of Trenton, right?
Well, they wouldn't pick up an additional seat. They would still have one seat, even if they took Trenton.
No, I know. No, but if you took Trenton out of one district, the district that you took Trenton out of would probably flip and then become Republican, no?
No, the evidence shows that if District 4 was given to Trenton was given to District 4, it would have no impact on District 12. So why would District 4 want?
I don't know. I couldn't tell you. I'm
okay.
So
why is District 12 so desperately?
He's looking at a very specific district that he has information on, so that he can then use that to prove whatever point.
But
none of us have this information available.
No, I know, that's fine. I'm willing to go down. Joe, I'll go down it with you. I'm
sure, yeah.
I promise
he's
using you as a jumping board for his own ideas and things.
I'm confident.
I'm
confident in my principles, and I understand that Joe can take me somewhere, but I'm not gonna he's not gonna lead me.
He'll buy you dinner first, you know.
Okay, but the
he's not gonna bend me over the barrel.
Joe is very long.
Joe's amazing lover. You would love it if he did that, okay?
I'll just get to the point. I'll just get to my point. How about that? I'll just get to my point.
Yeah, just make your fucking point, dude.
Yeah, I'll just get to the point.
This is a waste of time, though, because Joe, you have like a history of misrepresenting facts.
I know my facts about my state.
So even
I know the facts about my state.
Even this hyper-specific thing about your state, your local community that you're talking about.
Majority.
Right, we can't really trust it unless we're looking into it. So we don't know if it's a good representation of the problem you're trying to point out.
The problem is, and the argument. I'm not, but we can pretend
Hear
like
him
I
out.
am if you want. I don't know what that's going to do for you, but I know what I'm
Well,
talking about when I'm talking about my own state.
railroad
So I'm going to
example,
continue. We can drop
right?
this for now. I'm going to continue addressing half baked because he wanted to address it with
yeah.
it in good faith. So the
That
concern
big
that I
was
have is
silly enough to walk into your stupid fucking trap. Go ahead.
it's not a stupid. It's not a stupid fucking trap. It's a very real problem, which I think you probably agree with. Is that the motivations that Democrats have for keeping Trenton are different than the motivations that Republicans have for wanting Trenton. I would argue that it is along racialized lines. District 12 understands that they need to appeal to the black vote, and overwhelmingly, the black vote exists in the capital. Republicans in Jersey, excuse me, have a very uncomfortable relationship with race relations. So I would think it's politically advantageous for them to pick up Trenton. So then they have to overtly cater to a group of people that now has 80,000 new voters in their block. So I think it would be a net positive to add diversity into a district that is overwhelmingly non-diverse. So they're going to do the non-diverse argument because by and large, Democrats disenfranchise black people, Hispanic people, and Asian people in District 4.
This minutia is helpful. There's use to it, but it's very hard to engage with this minutia in any
Don't you love data and minutia?
way.
You gave us a 30-page study. Like,
no,
what the
I
fuck?
gave you a single abstract that you could read. You just need to read that paragraph. It's a paragraph, but this word math
boys,
problem,
just read the abstract. Then I
Yeah.
started looking into the study and using why the data wasn't effective in what you were saying. You just kept repeating and quoting the abstract.
I don't know. Like,
just
Republicans need to be more diverse. So District 4 should probably take Trenton. And Democrats have to stop holding on to Trenton like it's this monolith for black people voting in that district and probably expand in other ways. I don't know how that point is not the floor, but
Wick hasn't been able to finish his point.
Yes. So let's be clear that there are advantages to people in power, and they look at statistical data on how groups vote. This is demographics, at how this different groups grow. And in order to keep their power, they will act on that demographic data. Now, I honestly don't believe that Republicans in general are specifically racist and hate minority groups. I do not think that. I do, however, think that they are very interested in keeping power. Now, that said, it doesn't matter to me, and I don't care why they have chosen to do this. The fact that they have chosen to do this and it's impacting these groups negatively is an issue we need to address and is an issue we need to look into. And it's not just that group. There are other groups who are negatively impacted by these decisions on local state levels. It happens all the time, and we need to address
It's
that.
only impacting them negatively if they vote Democrat, right? It doesn't negatively impact them if they're
What
a
are you
black
talking about?
conservative.
You don't think that
It can
no,
be
you don't think
either.
that some of these
It
changes
can be
can
either one.
impact? Yeah, these.
If you're
like, I'll give you an example. In Pennsylvania, for example,
It's a partisan issue, right? Yeah, I'm sorry. I agree. I'm agreeing with Wick. I thought we had established this earlier on in this conversation that it's a bipartisan issue.
Yes.
Yeah.
It just depends on where you're at. Like I said, I think that there's parts of the country that the Democrats probably use it to their
Illinois.
advantage. But like I said, there's an entire region of the country that it's overwhelmingly used by
New
conservatives.
Mexico,
that's a problem,
Illinois,
then we need to address
Maryland.
it.
True.
Now, when we look at white rural
gerrymandered
voters,
the Democrats.
and we look at white rural voters, there is evidence and there's data to suggest that a lot of these voting changes that are being placed by Republican legislators will hurt them too, because they have less access than they have now, and because white rural poor communities, it's hard for them to get driver's license. It's hard for them to get these things. Not where I'm currently living, but where I lived before my move here. It's an hour and a half drive to get to the local DMV, and that was an issue for me when I was trying to change my state driver's license. It took time out of my day that basically I was waiting there. I had to schedule out a whole day. Luckily, I had the means to do that. But when we talk about these things, there are racial aspects to it that we definitely need to address, but there are other aspects that we definitely need to address. And this doesn't just hurt Democrats, it doesn't just hurt Republicans, it hurts everyone. And we need to engage with it as a problem because everyone benefits if we fix it.
Prime, were you saying earlier?
I
Oh, my bad. Start this and say
You
that.
start us,
I
please.
do want
Data
to.
doesn't bear out any of what you're
Sorry,
saying.
sorry, Stardust
I-
hasn't got a chance to speak. Go ahead.
Yeah, so in Australia, it doesn't seem like there's much of a problem with this because they do actually have an independent commission that determines the districting. So that could be a solution.
You also get fined if you don't vote. Like their election process is wildly different because of that.
Well, I mean, we don't have to implement everything, but like if we're talking about specifically gerrymandering, then yeah, we should maybe try to look at other countries and see what they've done to combat this
I'm
issue.
just pointing out how their elections are.
Or we can.
I originally agree with that. I think like I've been swayed by like what they were saying about the multi-member district Stardust, just because like I feel like in Australia, don't they have like a different political system too? So it's like if we have like a two-party system that's entrenched,
Parliament, yeah.
it would be affecting like there would, I believe, be more corruption on the half of like a third party initiative. Like if there was a third party initiative, like what I would believe would work and you would believe would work, it feels like one party would gain control of them and then use them to their advantage.
There's always going in any solution that we propose. There's always going to be some room, like for possibility of corruption to come in. Right? We're just trying to find the best solution.
Right. The
So
state is always violent and corrupt.
okay.
I think that's why I like the idea that they posed of like the multi-member thing that Joe was talking about, and then I think Fabian Liberty was saying, because it would be like there's multiple people that are working within the same district, so it's kind of like they are competing for different spaces within that district in different political interests, but all of them could get elected at the same time, and that kind of seems to combat like a system where there's like two parties that are always vying for power, because now you could have like two Democrats and like a Republican representing three people in a large district instead of it being split up, if that makes sense.
I mean, the key thing here is that with the two-party system and the system that we have a winner-take-all system, right? So there's no difference in representation between winning 50.1% of the vote and winning 70% of the vote. Right? That's why gerrymandering is an effective tool to gaining more power, because if your margin of error is 5%, then you can make your districts theoretically 52.6% victory, right? And then offload the rest of your votes. But when you're talking about a multi-member district, right, what ends up happening is, let's say you have two people, what you'll end up having is you don't have a winner take all system at that point, right? Gerrymandering really doesn't help you that much, because what you'll end up having is likely a Democrat and a Republican candidate winning in the same district. And then if another district is heavily Democrat, you'll have two Democrats. And if another district is heavily Republican, you'll have two Republicans, right? So it gets rid of the winner take all system that is kind of the reason why people gerrymander in the first place.
I was wondering, and this is like a legitimate question, just because I haven't like looked into it. Could like I've seen like Prime, you were referencing earlier about the federal government like drawing all like state districting. Like, can that be? Is that feasible? Is that realistic?
It'd be a real tough hurdle constitutionally.
What
I'm not even talking about corrupt. I'm just saying like
constitutionally.
No, I'm just saying.
What do you mean by feasible? Go ahead.
Well, I'm saying would the federal government have a decent idea of how because the point of districting is supposed to be ethically, you're supposed to be framing out a community, and could people who aren't technically from those communities be able to draw out, like decide where a community starts?
You don't have to be from a community, and most of these, like the fucking GOP legislators, are not from these communities. They don't give a shit. No, they have the government has the census, and those the GOP, they use the census data. For and anyone, not just GOP, but they just when you're drawing these maps, like they use the census data. So yeah, I don't see why they couldn't.
I think like how would that process even occur? Because like you need to have the states like vote on this, have some form of act, and then at that point, like, wouldn't it come into play, like the idea that they wouldn't want to have more control of their own like legislative process? Like, why would a state give that up? Why would
They
it
have
be?
no
You're not.
incentive to do
You're
so. It's a bad idea on the fact that, again, of people who, and it's bad that the GOP senators who don't live in these districts and aren't affiliated with these districts are able to run these districts and represent these districts. That's a bad thing. Putting it at a federal level just means that that happens uh, nationally all over, because you have people who do not live in communities, who are not invested in communities, who are not part of the community, making decisions for that community that can positively or negatively impact it. They don't have any skin in the game.
It
And so
goes
there's
against
It
a
the
would
idea of
require. It would absolutely
the House.
require a constitutional amendment, and there's
Yes.
not a chance in fucking hell you're gonna get 37 states to sign off on giving up their voting the
I'm with
rights
Wick
that
on
they
this
hold.
because I'm with Wick on this because I do, while I do think we need to like find a solution to this, I think it needs to be on the local level and just passing it off onto the federal. Like he said, there's the people who are making these decisions should be invested in the community surrounding them.
I
Yeah,
think
I mean,
inherently it falls into what Half Baked Takes is talking about too, because it's just like we're talking about
yeah,
like
you require a
con-
constitutional amendment.
we're talking about like congressional districts. Like you wouldn't want there to be like that's the whole point. It's like you wouldn't want there to be like a federal oversight to that level.
Yeah, I mean the whole point of gerrymandering, I mean not the whole point of gerrymandering, but the whole balance against gerrymandering is that the public then has the ability to vote out the state legislator. If you put it in the hands of the federal government that is doing it, the federal government is drawing their lines for how the federal government gets elected, and then the entire country has to then solve this gerrymandering problem that may have occurred in a specific state. It's like you literally get rid of the ability for the local electorate to be able to vote out the individuals that are doing the gerrymandering.
The
I
gerrymandering wouldn't go away. It would just get moved to the federal government. It would just get moved to actors within higher status
exactly.
of
It'd just be
power.
harder to deal with.
You
I-
can
It
you
doesn't
can
seem
require
feasible.
partisan gerrymandering, right? You can like you can.
We already established why that was a horrible issue, though.
Well, no, you
Like
said no. I mean, you
nonpartisan,
said it. I mean, you said it.
nonpartisan
But that doesn't mean we
the
can
I
stop
actually
it.
agree with
bipartisan
Fabian on that.
the
It's crazy enough.
bipartisan committees make it worse. It's the worst. If you're looking at metrics from symmetry and responsiveness and not necessarily efficiency, if you're looking at the metrics of how many competitive seats there are, right, which is responsiveness, like the worst part of gerrymandering is bipartisan commissions that are designed to get rid of gerrymandering. That's where the worst gerrymandering comes from. Now, when you look at partisan gerrymandering, right, that disproportionately affects people in terms of, political party affiliation, yeah, bipartisan gerrymandering and committees will have less of that. But the problem is that partisan gerrymandering pushes people towards the center and makes districts more competitive. Bipartisan gerrymandering does the exact opposite. So partisan gerrymandering by almost every metric is better for the constituency and the voter than bipartisan gerrymandering. Obviously, no gerrymandering is better than both.
This is why I support multi-member districts.
I think like
Yeah.
I think an interesting thing is that it feels like when you're looking at like this gerrymandering and you're looking how it's done, it doesn't seem like it's very hard to do redistricting. It seems like it's more of like there's different wants, and when during this process different ideas of what like democracy would look like, a representation. And like what do you guys think about that, in the sense that there's people that would view like I want to have let's say black people, or like I want to see Asians representative and I want to have them have a district within a state, and instead of viewing it as I want to divide this populace by region in a different light because I want to have representation shown in a different way. What do you guys think about the idea of like having racialized groups because of the positivity of it, having them
Yeah,
have more of a say?
there is some positive effects to it, but there's also some risks that we gotta keep in mind when we do these things. And when we, for example, we can look at predominantly minority school districts and things like that. They tend to be funded less. People care about them less. That they get less attention, less of resources in general. This again, generally, historically has been the case. So when you create districts and things like that, and when you create any kind of system which segregates by race, there are risks that the minority communities will be hurt. Now, there's positives aspects to this too. As you said, they can have a more of a voice that represents their community and their culture. But I'm wary of it. I'm not entirely against it, but I would be cautious.
Yeah.
What would you say to like somebody that says like, all right, if my state has a 20% population of a certain like racial group, that they have like 20% of a say overall, no matter where they are, in a district, versus having a complete one district that has all of these individuals and they have ultimate say within that district, and then the rest of the state has ultimate say on other matters. Like, what do you believe about that idea? The idea of like, seeing equality done or seeing like representation done by segregation.
I mean, that would be advocating for segregation.
Yes. So like what do you guys like?
Well,
It seems like that's what gerrymandering is like effectively doing now, is that they're
Yeah,
like
that's bad.
segregating. But if like
I
it
don't
seems
think
like
it's
these
It's
minority
necessarily
doing
groups,
bad.
both.
it
It's
seems
doing
like
both.
these,
It's like they don't give a fuck about like the black community or the Asian community. What they give a fuck about is making districts 52% in their favor. Like in certain instances, they will split up a black community because it allows them to win more seats. And in certain districts, they will maintain the black community because it gives them victory in certain seats. They don't give a fuck about any of that, right? Like if it has the added benefit of breaking apart certain communities so that it's more difficult for them to have individual political voices, sure, because that's a challenge to their authority and a challenge to the state. But at the end of the day, they don't give a fuck about the community splitting it up or keeping it together. What they give a fuck about is maintaining their own power.
I don't think this necessarily is right. I think that this
I
like thing where we
don't.
pretend every politician is like an asshole, piece of shit who like doesn't care about the community they're representing is I think kind of silly. But I would also kind of agree with Wigwam. I don't think that well maybe not. I'd probably go a little further because I think that if I were a politician, I'd be in favor of racial gerrymandering, right? Because it would keep me in power. And I don't think that the fact that they racially gerrymander, right, based on groups' tendencies to vote certain ways, is like necessarily a bad thing. Right? And I think you could make an argument for why it might be a positive thing that this exists in some of these states, because you end up with more Democrats or Republicans in office, depending on your political allegiance and your political goals, because that's how policy gets passed, right? At the end of the day. So I don't know. So if you're like a Democrat, right, and you're wanting gerrymandering to stop taking race into account, right? You're wanting them to stop doing this. You want like across the board, equal whatever the fuck, right? That might end up with a lot more Republicans in office, right? Or a lot less black and brown people, if that's what you care about, right? So maybe you shouldn't be arguing in favor of unracialized gerrymandering.
It's
I,
hard.
Yeah,
I
because
hate using
I
this
think
word, but I
real
feel
quick.
like what you just described, and I don't mean this in like the SJWA, but like what you just described was essentially, even if you don't like the word, if you don't like the word racism, is like white supremacy. Yeah,
How? I'm saying that you guys are being white supremacists in
you,
effect, right? If all we care about is the impact, if what you guys are arguing for, and you guys think the Republican Party are racist, right? If what you're arguing for ends up leading to more Republicans in office, more white people in office, right, and less black and brown people in office, then in effect you guys are being the white supremacists
no,
right
I
now.
was addressing the
And what
original
I'm
thing you
saying
said about
that,
saying
given that I'm a brown person, it might make sense for me to support gerrymandering along racial lines.
Yeah, I outside of that, like I think that's the interesting thing is like from BAM's perspective, like what you've shown earlier and stuff, it seemed like people of certain racial groups would want to be segregated in such a way because they have better advocacy, because they'll have a district that is solely theirs and they have their opinions heard. However,
But
this would go against like the preachings of America, like the idea of segregation being a mistake, something that happened in the past that we should forget, and it goes
there
against like
is
the
it
tenets that
there
racism?
we.
are even
Is it
even to things
congressional
that are
districts aren't that
Yeah.
to congressional districts like being consolidated in one congressional district isn't a good thing because well like state congress people don't actually like they don't do things in that district. They represent you in the federal government, so you don't want like it's a bad thing when they're all well generally when they're all the minorities consolidated into one district. You want them
Well,
to
this
be
is
represented in multiple districts if possible.
yeah. This is why
overwhelmingly.
I
Go on,
support the
please.
expansion of like districts. So, but also expansion of districts with multi-member districts, because that way you can have like proper representation, or at least try to, because people are going to have to appeal to different groups. Like, if I'm concerned that there's certain districts in my state that are majority white, like District 4, maybe adding Trenton to the mix, making it a incredibly more diverse district, because you're encompassing 80,000 more people, and then it's going to be more competitive. Like, I'm going to put it in chat
Where
itself.
where did those 80,000 people go? Like, the Trenton has to come from somewhere. That district has to be it has to be equally proportionally equal. So you're gonna have to like make it up somewhere. You're gonna have to cut other districts up, and that's inevitably gonna lead. That's inevitably gonna lead to the same problem.
No, it's not.
No.
No system
Here's
is
the
perfect.
issue. Listen,
No system is perfect.
It's
here.
not. It's
But
like
I
I can
should
push. I
address-
can
Wait,
debunk
address
this like right
this.
now. Like, look
it would
at
be
like
slightly it would
look
be
at
slightly
what-
different because you would
yeah.
have you could have like let's say if the outcome is that let's say like a Democrat is elected or like a Republican gets
Mhm.
elected every time, but now they also have to answer to a different demographic as well. Wouldn't you believe that even though the outcome is a Republican or a Democrat gets elected, that their policies would shift based on the different voters that have like joined the district?
Okay, a lot of people are
again,
going to
like-
disagree with me on this take, but
This
I
is
think
the-
as a nation, our policy and our goal, what we should work towards, is equality of opportunity. And if we make it an equal opportunity for everyone, no matter what race or poverty level you live in, to have access to the resources they need, that yes, sometimes you're going to have racial disparate outcomes in general,
my
but
God.
that's just the way the cookie crumbles sometimes, and we need
What
to
are you
look at it.
talking about?
But
Wick. You don't believe that. You do not believe that. And
why do I
I'm
not
gonna
believe
push-
that?
How do you make this equality of opportunity equitable?
Okay,
How do you
you're
make this
asking me
fair?
to solve a problem that we haven't been able to solve.
You
for
just
years and years
posited
and
the
years, Steve,
idea,
and I can't.
you said we should like. You
Yes,
said
you can have a goal.
I have a
if I-
study.
can I-
I have a study.
No,
Look, you can have
Wick,
an
Wick,
overall
Wick,
goal,
you
a
said,
mission
Wick,
statement that you
Wick,
work
you
towards.
said,
Not know
you
how
said,
to get there exactly right now.
you said,
But oh my God,
you said
you're not
that.
listening.
You said that. So I'm going to say what
We are
I
listening.
heard you say, and then you can gladly push back. You said it's something that you advocate for, which isn't really popular, is the idea that we should strive for equality of opportunity. Did you say that?
I think he means equity of opportunity because I don't know. I actually agree.
That's why
with
I'm
what
trying to
Wick
figure
was
this
saying.
out. That's why I'm trying to figure this out.
Equitable opportunity.
So when I say equality of opportunity, I mean when, like for example, as we've mentioned again and again on this panel, that when they gerrymander and they do it on racial lines, it disproportionately hurts racial
It's not fair.
minorities
Yeah.
being able to have a voice. And
Mhm.
so to create an equal opportunity for their voice to be heard, there are steps we can take in order to make it more equal. It won't be 100%. We're never going to get this 100%. It's just not going to happen. But we can get closer than we are.
Wait,
And
What's
that-
an
you guys,
example
listen,
that you could?
No,
Never
no,
mind.
like you guys
Too
keep
long.
switching. You guys keep switching from one position to the other based upon what argument is. No, listen, just for a moment. Based upon what arguments are being made, because the problem is because both of these positions have both positive and negative aspects to them, right? And the fact of the matter is if you gerrymander and you split up racial districts, that can be a problem for that district to be able to have a voice, for that district to be able to have proper
It'd also be
representation.
positive.
But it can be a positive because it can take predominantly minority, predominantly Democrat communities
not
that
saying
are like.
anything new, man. Like, yes, there are problems and there are.
I know I'm not saying
for
anything new
every
because I'm
single thing
reiterating.
that
Rick,
we
shut the
do.
fuck up for just a second. You think you're saying something smart. You're not. Listen to what I'm trying to say.
It's fucking word salad. Oh my God.
It's not fucking word salad.
He's
I'm
just
being very
saying that
concise.
it's
I'm
the- he's-
reiterating the two positions here so that I can make you understand why switching between these two positions is not helpful, right? So in one position, you have a group of individuals of any type of racial group, socioeconomic status, doesn't matter. They have certain demographics. You can keep them together. And by keeping them together, what this can do is it can give them a stronger voice. but it can come with fallbacks, or you can split them up. If you
Obviously,
split
you
them
didn't
up,
listen to what I told to Wig.
Wick, shut the fuck
Wig
up. I got to the
initially
exact same
Oh my
portion
god.
of what I was saying,
You're just
and you're
you're
interrupting
ignoring what's
again.
actually being
Because
said.
Wick,
You're
Oh my
why
God.
can't you control your
Oh
impulses
my
for a little
God.
bit and just let him
Whoa,
Yeah,
finish?
that-
Wick, take your fucking Adderall.
I'm sorry, Wick.
So,
I'm
No,
sorry.
it's okay. You
right,
don't have
the
to.
second,
Wick.
the
Oh
second,
my God. Okay, one at a time, and I'll make sure both of you can speak. So, Scott, finish your nonsense, then Wick, slap him back. All right.
all right, that's fine. It's just being right here. So the second position here is that if you split them up, you can have more competitive districts. You can have an electorate that more accurately represents the country as a whole in such a federal system, et cetera, et cetera. Now, and on top of that, you don't have districts, minority districts of low socioeconomic status that get less funding and have less property taxes that are used for their schools, right? So there are positive and negatives to both of these situations. And the problem is that you don't get to pick one without having the negatives of having picked that solution. This is why the states do this. This is why the states redraw lines every 10 years. It's not just because of population. It's also so that if people don't like the way their districts were drawn, they can go, they can vote, they can bring in different people that will draw the lines differently that works better for their community. The only real solution to this problem is not gerrymandering in one way or the other, it's multi-member districts. It's literally the only solution here.
There are multiple solutions.
Name
Some
one.
better than others. Some, well, like the gerrymandering and things like that. As we mentioned, partisan gerrymandering is better than bipartisan gerrymandering. But you claim and you posit that this multi-member solution, and I don't know, you may be very correct, but what you just said is you just basically word for word repeated what I've been saying this entire time, that no matter what we do, no matter what we pick,
partisan gerrymandering isn't good at all.
no matter what we
It's just
pick,
the idea that one is worse. Like murdering one person is not good.
maybe I'll get
Murdering
to
two
talk. I don't
people is
know. It's
worse.
possible. I mean,
I don't know.
yeah,
Maybe
there's
like
bit.
you use a little bit of
So,
violence, but
okay.
statistically, as you've shown, like
What I'm saying is that no matter what we do, there's going to be issues, there's going to be problems, there's going to be ways to address it. However, when you create a system, you create mechanisms within that system to change, to adjust, to be responsive to problems that later arise. So Fabian, when you went on your screed there, that obviously hasn't listened to a single fucking word I've said this entire time. It's very obvious to the viewers at home and to the people on this panel that you just have no ability to engage with other people in an honest manner. And that's my biggest problem with you, what you've been doing this entire time. You are not engaging with these topics.
Would you like to
in
make a
very
fucking
honest
argument,
manner.
or would you just keep
Just
with your
making
word
honest
salad
manner.
bullshit? Make
Like,
an
you
argument.
keep saying bullshit.
Make an argument.
You keep saying this shit that doesn't mean anything.
Make an
or
argument.
You say exactly what I'm saying and
BTFO,
say, well,
motherfucker,
why
make
don't
an
you say
argument
Can
and
you
this?
shut the
stop
fuck up.
interrupting
That's
him?
good then.
It's a little bit inconsiderate, especially given
Well,
that
it
you
doesn't
pointed
matter.
out
He can
about
be
people
rude. I don't mind.
interrupting
I don't mind if
you.
he's
So
rude. That's fine. What
He's
I'm
not making a
saying
fucking
is
point.
that nothing you said there contributed to the conversation in any meaningful way whatsoever.
thank you, moderator.
And we're all dumber for having heard it, of course.
Oh fuck.
I'm
Okay.
joking, Scott. I love you. But can someone just tell me again, what's the issue with this racial gerrymandering? If it leads to positive outcomes, if it leads to more Democrats in office, which I assume most of you want.
I don't want more Democrats in office.
Really, you want?
I just think it's
So-
important
so
to
again-
Clear about that.
maintain
My state, like my
consistency
state, my
in the
state
standards
has
we
been,
hold.
my state has been bulldozed by Democratic majorities who railroad any type of progressive legislation. I don't like these people. I don't like this state.
Doobie.
Right,
it's
but if there is there any
the idea-
indication that if
overtly
we
gerrymander to cater to Democrats and they don't get anything done.
okay, but is there any indication that if they didn't do this, right, that you'd end up with more progressives in office and not more Republicans?
Yes,
But
we'd probably pass weed
Mm.
legislation if we brought
Yeah.
Republicans to the table.
Doobie, it's like it's the idea I think of like competition. If you believe like competition would be good, like having the idea that the Democrat is always going to win, will make those Democrats worse. So like if you
Makes them
want
like complacent, like they don't need to serve the
Exactly.
population.
So you want to have like some level of competition so that they have to pull like at least some ideas from the other side or all sides in order to always be like better representing the population, or else they'd be like you said, complacent.
I see. I understand. I just think that it's interesting that like I don't know, because I think there could be a good argument for, given that we are most of you guys are like lefties, and we understand that people of different racial backgrounds have different experiences in this country. I don't know if you could ever say that a black like senator could ever actually represent a white constituent of theirs, or vice versa, right? So wouldn't it make more sense in some ways to have these like, rather than like worrying about racially gerrymandering these places or not, just have racial groups within a state
I
vote for a
reject that notion.
representative, right? That could push for the interests of that group.
I reject that notion. I do not think that, or I do think that someone who is a Black American can adequately represent me. I mean, they're not.
Do you
It's not.
think? Do you think the opposite? Do you think
Yes,
the
I
opposite
think
could
a
happen?
white American can adequately represent a Black American as well. That your
That's.
race or skin color doesn't have anything to do with it in adequate
I
representation.
think it's
It has a
totally
Because
lot
you
to
can
disconnected
do.
from
have
the reality of
because
like what it is to live in the United States.
I think it has a lot
I
to do with it.
disagree.
I don't think we're there yet. I think like we'd have to demonstrate that like
There's
not being
nothing
part of a group.
within the skin tone or the melanin levels of someone that creates this ability to identify or to represent, I should say, better one group than another.
Yeah,
I'll
y'all
go a
are
little bit
overrepresenting.
Well,
further.
Y'all
this
are
is
y'all,
like
What
you
Wick is
wouldn't
saying
hold
is
this
correct.
argument. You wouldn't
I'll
hold this argument for like women. You wouldn't be like
What
women
are you
are
talking about? Yes, I
Of
would.
you.
course,
Yes, a
Well, then do you
man
this
believe
can
is
that
on a state
women?
represent,
level.
Do you
adequately
believe that
represent.
women are adequately served in our like our government? Let's say
No, they've
20
been
years ago when you
failed.
had a lot of men.
They've been failed by who left? Okay. Well, they've been failed, but it's possible to do. Just because it hasn't been done right doesn't mean it cannot be done right. Does
No
that make
woman could
Yeah,
ever
Yes, there
adequately
is.
represent
but I
me.
think representation on a state level and on national level isn't necessarily about like, do you like the same type of music as me? It's dealing with like tax codes. It's dealing with like voters' right. Like these things can easily be represented by someone of a
No,
different
no,
race or
no black
demographic.
man could ever adequately represent me.
That's true. That's true.
I think that's a
Neither
fair
could a
You're
white
too
man,
much.
but
Yeah.
but no black
Yeah,
man
so then
ever
why
could.
why so why say it? Just say nobody can represent me.
Mm.
You really didn't really like because voting is like not a thing. So it's like like of course nobody's gonna represent you. You
Yeah,
know,
exactly. There's no
like
such
doesn't
thing as a
matter the race, doesn't matter
representative
the
that's going to
gender.
be able to adequately represent every individual within its society. It's stupid to think that they could.
Well, that's why we
Exactly.
have districts, and that's why we have areas where they don't represent everyone in the society. They represent
I
small specific communities and portions.
I
And
Right.
think
yeah,
I
They
they
think
definitely
represent the interests of the majority at the behest and at threat of
of their
violence
specific
against the
community.
minority
Of their
Wiggle,
of their
specific
wiggle. What'd you
community.
have to say?
Yeah, I was
Quickly.
gonna say, like, I'd imagine like you'd want the interest to be like tied. Like, if I was somebody that experienced like a level of like oppression because of some like characteristic, and there's somebody else, let's say there's somebody in California that's like Filipino that experienced something really similar from other people of other Asian groups, then I imagine they would represent my interest better than somebody that has not experienced a similar level of like oppression to that characteristic. Like I don't think like saying it doesn't matter at all and anybody
Well,
can serve
that's why
you
It
or have the
helps, but it's not
capacity.
necessary. It's not a requirement.
Yeah, but
Having firsthand experience with something always helps. No one, I think anyone who says
exactly.
that that's
And
not
so we should
better.
maximize that, right?
No, I don't think. But it shouldn't
Why?
be
Bam.
Helps. It always
just
helps.
because it helps doesn't mean it should be like it should. Should be our threshold. That should be like our
Wait, but
our
Bam,
the.
like let's. Do you think like a black or brown person could ever fully understand the experience of a white American who's concerned about their racial demographic being replaced in this country?
I don't. Again, I don't think I don't think that you have to understand every nuanced issue to know whether to vote yes or no on a bill that's put in front of you. Like I don't think Wick understands every nuance of racism. Like, but if they're like, if
Oh, it's a
I
compromise.
don't know his politics, but I know if someone drew up a bill that benefited black people, I without even knowing Wick's politics, I think he would be capable of saying like, oh, okay, I can vote yes or no for that, without even understanding all the niche and nuance of it.
And that's what I believe is like weird about the
But
way
that's not
that
a
we're discussing
compromise,
things.
though.
We discuss things, or at least on this panel, you guys have been discussing things of all that matters is the outcome, and I think that's why you would think this way, is that
I
it
never
doesn't
said the
matter about.
outcome.
You've
Well-
talked about this on other the issues that we've talked about on this panel so far, of the idea of racism, like it's just about the outcome. If the
No,
outcome is this way,
that was the straw
thought
man that was held to me. I'm saying that it was racist. It was racist because it was targeted intentionally beforehand. Like that was the intention, not just the outcome. But not because they hated black people. I'm saying that they. I'm using when I say racist, I don't mean like hating black people or wanting work for black people. I'm saying that they specifically target black people in intention beforehand, and like
Okay.
the use of
He
it.
says
Then
racist.
I would
He
agree
doesn't
with
mean
you.
racist.
I would agree with you.
Racial targeting
I'm
is.
I'm trying to I'm
is
just
racist.
trying to demonstrate that in the idea that like if
says a
somebody
word, he means a
passes a
different word.
policy or someone advocates for something that benefits you, yes, right now if you're starved for like legislation that benefits you, you're gonna be like, I'm satiated with that. However, like I imagine that intention should matter. You should believe that, hey, this person wanted this thing because of the same reasons I wanted it, versus they just wanted this thing.
Things to consider when
So we gotta, guys, we're already over time. So I just needed to all right. So let's get cracking. So to my audience, we will continue on with our open walk-on panel just after this, right? We'll honest members like you, yes, you sitting at home may participate. So stick around for that. We still have more content coming your way. We always do. I'm going to give these amazing individuals an outro, but before that happens, remember to hit that follow button right now. Hit that follow button. Make sure notifications are on so you know I'm going live. I do 6 nights a week, lots of nights a week. 7 nights a week occasionally. Oh man, I'm really tired. I actually really like to be asleep right now. Anyway, whatever. I'm here for you. Exclamation point social and chat. For our social media, follow us on Twitter for tweets. Discord, where everything happens, including the walkout panel, will be happening right after this. So if you want to be a part of that, jump on in. But we have offline conversations, even if you don't want to jump on stream. We have something for you, so we'll let you be a part of that. YouTube, of course, is where you find the VODs. If you missed anything, like, comment, and subscribe, then consider becoming a YouTube member, hitting that join button, supporting us that way as well. Okay, great. I'm going to give an outro to all these individuals, and then again, we're going to go to open walk on panel. The content does not end. Let's go to Fabian Liberty Scott, who got into it again, but I love it.
So I am Scott from the channel Fabian Liberty. We are a duo stream of anarcho-capitalists, which basically means that we believe that the only moral system is one that is of voluntary association and of private property rights. You can catch us at Fabian Liberty on YouTube or Rumble or here on Twitch. Thank you so much. I love coming here to be everybody's favorite enemy.
Okay, thank you. I think maybe Dewey might have that on you. Like you haven't been here long enough to take
He's softening up the more I'm here because now he gets to argue his real positions. He doesn't have to be contrarian.
Oh, I would love to hear what our Dark Lord and Savior thinks about that. Doobie, what are your thoughts on this? Are you going soft on us? Are you squishy like a frog?
No, I don't. I think you guys have just learned not to argue with me about shit that we disagree on. Right? This is why we don't really talk about the porn thing anymore, about the weed thing, or about banning alcohol, right? Or about how democracy is terrible and we should have like a technocratic system. We don't talk about this anymore because if you guys have learned that you can't really challenge me on any of those topics. So I appreciate that. Makes things a lot more comfortable for me here. But I'm not softening up at all.
Okay. All right. Frogs are hard. Let's Doobie, tell the one about yourself.
Yeah, I'm Doobie. I am hard currently, and you can find me on discord.gg/politics.
We have a lady present, honestly. So let's go Wick. Chapter 17. Look, Wick, I appreciate you. I'm so again, I'm happy that you're back. You're a good guy, It doesn't matter if I agree with you or not. It doesn't matter if you're on the other side. Look, I just enjoy having you around, especially since it gets under Boshi's skin, so that makes me happy. So, okay, Wick, tell the world about yourself.
I'm glad to be back. My name is, well, my moniker here is Wick on Discord and on Twitch, and my channel is Death of Certainty. And I understand that I can get passionate at times, but I do appreciate the pushback on my ideas. I want to be challenged. I want people to look at my ideas and poke holes in them. And I am open to being wrong because I've been wrong before. I'll be wrong again. If you ever think you're entirely in the right, and you're probably going down a really bad rabbit hole. That said, I'm more concerned about systems than I am individual issues. I'm more concerned about um, the overall picture than the individual in general, because the way we deal with systems can solve a lot of these individual problems. And so that's what I like to focus on. That's what I like to concentrate on. I don't think it's helpful to call anyone racist. I don't think it's helpful to look at any of these things or like, well, they're doing it because they hate black people. We can acknowledge that harm is being done, and it doesn't matter whether they hate them or not. That's the whole point of systemic uh, studies. Is we don't need to identify whether someone is racist or not to know that they are causing harm to racial groups, and that's why it's a huge benefit to deal with things in that. You can find me on my channel, twitch.tv/death of certainty. I will be starting streaming here again another next week or so. I got to transfer all my data. But thank you. Glad to have you. Hope to be on more of these panels. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. You definitely will. At least I will be reaching out in which way. So let's go to Doobies. Don't give in to Boji's like weird fucking foot fetish, all right? Like you need to ignore her when she does that.
Look, if I don't do it, she's gonna bully me in chat, and it hurts my feelings.
Okay. We have Black American Made. Thank you. For jumping into the last, just the bang to come in. Like I want to come in. I'm like, all right, yes sir. So Black American Made, thank you for being around. Tell a little about yourself.
Yeah, thanks for letting me slip in here, argue with y'all for a little bit for the night. It's always a great way to end the night. But yeah, no, I don't know. I think I've been on panels with everyone. Well, actually, never been with Stardust. Nice to meet you.
Or Wick.
Oh yeah, have I? Have I never been on Wick?
No,
My bad, Wick.
He's been gone for months. Yeah.
I'm glad to see you. I'm glad it was fun. I enjoyed the interlocution. So
yeah, definitely. So nice meeting y'all. Everyone knows I'm the man who's never been wrong. Not even once. I've been trying. I just can't seem to be wrong. Yeah, follow me on YouTube, Twitch, and even my Twitter. All same thing, Black American Made, and you'll be smarter for it. Thanks.
Thank you, buddy. All right, moving on. We got MVP, Joe Lewis. Joe Lewis, thanks for coming through. Thanks for deciding to raise your blood pressure one more time before you go to bed, as you always do. So it's much appreciated, buddy. Damaged your health for the cause.
Yeah, no, this was a lot of fun. Like, listen, I'm getting B more pilled, okay? Like, I'm getting B more and Wiggly pilled every day. Like, I see like these liberals like, hey, do you have a study for that? Oh, but that's just anecdotal. You want to like do you have evidence to support this claim? I'm just thinking, listen, 18 of the 21 counties in New Jersey have one party control. Mine has been in control of Democrats for as long as I've been alive. I could switch Republican right now, full hard body, and vote red down ballot every single election until I die, and nothing will change. So there's that. Maybe I'll do it. You guys are like one shitty liberal takeaway from me doing it. But anyway, you can follow me if you want it. Twitch.tv/Joe Lewis, the O being 0. And I'm always good. Always fun to argue and stuff. So glad to be here,
Hey, thank you. Next we have Stardust is here. And Stardust, well, you're leaving soon. Stardust, thank you for coming through. And now my DMs won't be filled with anger and vitriol anymore, right?
I've never directed any anger or vitriol towards you. Yeah, but thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Please consider me having me again. I love arguing with people. I just like it. Yeah, and I'm probably the liberal that's going to make a whole bunch of leftists just become Republican overnight. I'm totally okay with that. I have been called an insufferable bitch. I am also famously known as a brown savage, disgusting animal. You should check me out. I'm on Twitch 7 days a week. Please check me out. I do politics, and I am the #2 Power Wash Simulator streamer on Twitch. Thank you so much for having me.
A harder working woman than I am. All right, so check her out. All right, so we will go wrap it up with my man Wiggle. Wiggle, who chopped up here, did a damn good job. He always does, right? So I keep inviting him. So Wiggle, thanks so much.
Would you believe this is only my third reverie? Like I've known you more than a year and like 6 months or like some long amount of time. I don't know. I usually spend time watching these, and then so it's cool to be on them from time to time. I remember thinking it was so intimidating, looking at people on the screen and being like, "Damn, they talk a lot." And then eventually gets to the point where you're like, I really don't like some of those people. And then eventually it gets to the point where you're there and you're arguing against them. It's interesting how that works. I don't know. I think like back to when I first was like on your panels, like I had terrible lighting and stuff, and I didn't really want to make up my mind on my decisions. Everybody comes in as like an enlightened centrist, where they say the same bullshit, where they listen for other people and they take the best thoughts and say that those are theirs and they take ownership. I think over time though, what I've learned is just that it feels like the people that want change the most are like the easiest people to talk to, and the people that at first I didn't want to hear about became the people that I wanted to listen to all the time, even if I disagreed with them. Eventually, like the liberal is boring. Eventually, yeah, always hearing that just have faith. Things will work out. Even when bad things happen, it's kind of annoying. It's like it's biblical or something. It's so irritating. And I promise you guys this, everybody that's watching or all the people on here, that whatever the Democrats are promising you today, they're not going to deliver on. And all the things that you tell your friends and tell people, they're not going to give you that stuff. And it's about time that you start taking matters into your own hands and trying to ruin the two-party system. Try to vote outside of it. Try to do something. And whether some of you guys move to being Republicans, that's not what I would do. But if that's what you want to do that. I think that's not really going to help. I think the best thing you can do is start advocating for something else. Something else. That's it. The very little.